Why run as a Republican? If you feel like you're more of a conservative than a Republican?
Because the Republican Party, the principles upon which the Republican Party was started right here in Wisconsin over in Ripon, was a principle of smaller government, lower taxes. Government serves a purpose, but should not be intrusive in our lives. And I would like to believe that we can restore the Republican Party to the party it once was, and I'm optimistic that we can.
And what role do you see a movement like the Tea Party movement having in politics? I guess we're kind of talking about politics and what belief systems are of yourself and the different parties. How is that going to benefit or change or not benefit or detract from the Republican Party, or just the way the government's going in general in the United States?
First off, I don't think it's a given that the Tea Party is all Republican by any stretch of the imagination. We've worked very hard with the Tea Party, and we've gone to many of them. And what I find there is a whole group of people who love their country and love their state, and they are fed right up to here with what their government is doing and taking over too much of their life. Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you that that's basically me. When we were in the private sector working our tail ends off in business, and they keep throwing more rules and regulations and more taxes at us, eventually people in the private sector say, I've had enough. And the Tea Party is a reflection of them actually taking action on the I've had enough part. In our lives, it's actually running for office. But they've just plain had enough with what our government's doing. They don't want government in every aspect of our life. And listen, I'm not a government serves no purpose person. I think there are reasons for government. It does serve a useful purpose, but it's too big, it's out of control, and it's too intrusive in our lives today.
Like, can you give me an example of something that you think that when it's all said and done, government does better than the private sector?
Defense, defending America, safety in our state. I think that in some of our public schools, education, and I think that's a limited basis. I think we have some great private schools which we're involved with, but there are some really great public schools out there. There are folks in our society who are physically and or mentally not capable of working, and I think our government has a role in taking care of those people. Yeah, I mean, there is a role for government. Safety, health care of the people that are not able to take care of themselves.
Can you give me an example of some task that the government is doing now that perhaps some other entity, such as a nonprofit or the private sector, should take over?
The Obama health care plan comes to mind first and foremost. The concept of government taking over another 1/6 of our economy, and anybody thinks that they're not going to take it over should meet with our doctors and clinic folks and understand that as you put 31 million more people in the government role, it's likely to just plain break the system. And that's going to leave you with a government-run health care program. But the higher taxes in the health care program, the across-the-board, the Obama health care program would be the best example I can think of. The other thing, what we're really saying, I mean, in real dollar terms, what we're really talking about is all of our agencies across the board spending $1 out of every 100 less next year in real dollar terms. So if you spent $100 last year, you get to spend, and inflation is 3%, that would mean you need $103 this year. We're asking you to spend 102 instead. Yeah, and I will ask them to across the board bring in those sorts of spending reductions. And then I would add that it's at that point, once we've got that proposal on the table, that's our starting point. Reallocation of money is what's going to allow us to deal with things like the infrastructure being so far out of whack from where it should be right now. Look, I do anticipate higher spending in infrastructure. I think it's an important. You asked before, what does government do? Government should be doing infrastructure. So, and that's reallocation of spending.
And what would you see the government, I mean, Lynn kind of asked this, but I guess in a more concrete way, what would you see the government not doing in Wisconsin after one term if you were elected? I mean, what things would just be completely not on the radar that are on now?
Well, under this plan, you don't actually have to get rid of anything. Now, do I think we'll get rid of some things? Yeah, I think there'll be some reprioritization of some things, with the priorities leaning toward infrastructure, education. I mean, there are priorities in this thing. But as far as actually wiping things out, it's not absolutely essential. When the road builders, for example, come and talk to us, and they say, Mark, 2% increase is not enough, or whatever inflation is, 1% less than that, 2% is not enough of an increase. I'm going to look the road builders back in the eye and say, okay, I do think infrastructure is very important. Bring me the program that you think we can replace and take additional dollars out of, because that's the way it's got to be handled. If they want more money for infrastructure, which I think we are going to need, we're gonna have to find a different program that's less important than that we get rid of. And that I'll be working with each group individually on. If you wanna sell to me that you need more than your 2% increase, then I wanna know what you're more important than that we should get rid of. And we'll let them establish their own battlegrounds.
And where do you establish, I guess, a rainy day fund? I mean, how much money, how much do you cut down to get, if you are getting this gap in here, which is, you know, tax cut area, how much would you still anticipate? I mean,
Do we have a rainy day fund? That's open for debate. There will be resources available to build a rainy day fund if that's what we choose to do with it, but what we're not gonna do is spend it.
okay.
Do you have any, a position on a proposal before the legislature to eliminate the limits on the growth in the mill rate in counties? Columbia County is in a situation where we are going to be in a revenue loss situation if we have both levy limits and mill rates. And there is a bill before the legislature to allow the mill rate limit to sunset. Do you have an?
Well, I would approach, again, that question, I would approach it from the perspective of how do we get government out of your way so that you all can run your own business out here in a more cost-effective manner without Madison in your way. And let me be specific on this. I talked to a superintendent of schools, but it's the same with your county government, it's the same with your municipalities as it is with the school systems. And we were talking, the question I get asked all the time is, what about education costs? And you know, the same problem as you're defining with your county. And I said to the superintendent I was talking to, public school, how much is it costing you to educate your kids? He said $12,500. I said, Mark, his name was Mark, I said, if you got everything out of the way from the state, and the only thing the state did was monitor that your kids are growing academically 1 year for every year they're in your school system. So no state rules, no state mandates, you figure out how to do your job in the most cost-effective manner you can to make sure the kids are getting educated. That's the only thing the state's doing. How much would it cost to educate the kids?
And you'd be willing to do that with counties to
best of my ability. I mean, again, I'm painting the complete picture, but would I be willing to roll them back dramatically? Yes, and let's not get carried away that it becomes a radical proposal. The concept of the people in Columbia County knowing best how to handle the affairs in Columbia County is not a hard concept for me to understand. I don't want Madison handling Columbia County, I want Columbia County handling it. There's absolutely nothing that I've seen, by the way, in that school thing, he said $9,000 if the state got out of the way. So if they got rid of all government mandates, state of Madison mandates, he said from $12,500 down to $9,000. 25% of his money is spent with reports to the state and doing things the state is making him do, whether they help his education system or not. And I don't know what the number is for Columbia County, but I'll bet you dollars to donuts. If we empower Columbia County to figure out how to get their job done in the most cost-effective manner without the state mandates that currently dictate how you do business out here, that you will find it much more cost-effective and there will not be a need to increase the mill rate or to have the debate that we were about to have. So my approach to answer that question is very different, and that is get the state out of your lives and you all figure out how to do it in the most cost-effective manner possible. Listen, our business, when the housing downturn hit, we had to figure out, we took probably 15 to 20% out of our operations costs, and we still had to provide the goods and services to our people. So I'm totally confident that if local people are empowered to do their job in the most cost-effective way, they will find savings to a point where we do not need to have the discussion of government-mandated mill rates.